I think we're expecting a few more, so we're going to wait a minute.
Hey, Bri, how do I do the chat thing? Can you show me?
So if you move your cursor around on your screen, it should pop up where it says chat at the bottom, and you can click on that.
Do you see it? I don't see where chat is, do you? She was going to mute us.
All right.
But she said if
Brittany, you want to mute everybody? All right. Well, it is just about 4 minutes after 7, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to welcome everybody tonight to the first part of kind of a two-part Family Health Forum series that we're offering. Tonight's topic is on emotional wellness, and we are very lucky to have our clinical director here from our Strong Minds program, Amy Yonker. And some of you may have known her from being on our games management team for Region 6, so you may have seen her at events. She also has done, we've done 2 in-person Strong Minds events since we started that program, and she's done 2 virtual ones already for us. So she's a pro at this, and we're super lucky to have her. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to her. Just remember, you guys are on mute. If you wanna let us know that you have a question, feel free to shake your hands in front of it and wave, or you can type in the chat and we'll try to get those answered for you. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy, and thank you, Amy. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Missy. Yeah, so my name is Amy, and I am the clinical director for the Strong Minds program in Special Olympics, Wisconsin. So I kind of came into this position in a couple interesting pathways. So like Missy said, I've been connected with Special Olympics for about 9 years or so. I did an internship with Region 6 back when I was in my undergrad education, and that education was based around the psychology and counseling of disabilities. So I had a lot of interesting experiences learning about various disabilities, and through internships like Special Olympics, I was able to gain some more knowledge about, keeping your body strong and a lot of physical activity and some adaptations to physical activities. And then I moved into my career, which is in mental health. So when this opportunity came up for Special Olympics to introduce Strong Minds into Wisconsin, it was just a really great opportunity to put together a lot of the passion I have for, health and fitness and Special Olympics and sports with a little bit more of my career, which is mental health and, personal interest in keeping well and promoting positive mental wellness. So I'm here to, kind of talk about Strong Minds as a program, and also talk about just some other topics around mental wellness and mental health that we can we can hopefully use today's conversation as a tool to start thinking about ways that we can better improve our mental wellness in our lives. So part of that is going to be recognizing that we are whole people. And so we have physical health, we have mental health, we have emotional health, we have spiritual health. And we sometimes don't do a great job of talking about all of them together or how intertwined they are. So particularly in Special Olympics, we talk a lot about physical health, and this is an opportunity to also talk about kind of our mind and our emotional well-being, and to kind of see how those things intersect and what we can do to support athletes in this realm, and also what we can do for ourselves as people who support athletes. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, and I believe, yep, looks like we're sharing the slides here. So a little overview of the sort of topics we're going to talk about today. Like I said, we're going to discuss health and well-being, both kind of in the physical and mental health realms. We're going to talk about recognizing stress, both again in ourselves as caregivers and also in athletes and how we can support that. Got a couple exercises and some visuals to work through. We're going to talk a little bit about self-care, and particularly self-care as a lifestyle and how to keep balance in all of the things that we do. And then a little bit about support and resources at the end. So to start off, I think it's important to talk about and to get our minds kind of ready into the categories of physical health and the categories of mental health. So if you take kind of a second, think about maybe the words that come to mind when you think about physical health. What sort of like action words or descriptors, or when you think about your physical health, like what sort of words kind of come to mind? And spend a couple seconds thinking about that. And then we can ask that same question. What are some of the words that come to mind when you think about your mental health? What sort of topics come up, or what do you think of when you think of your mental health? We've got quite a few people in the room, so we won't necessarily share these out. But what I often find, or what I observe, is that when we talk about physical health, we have a lot of really positive images in our mind. We think about strength and health and feeling strong and feeling really well and feeling energized. And it's easy for us to associate a lot of really positive words with our physical health. And when we think about mental health, what I often see is that we don't have as many positive words to associate with that. So we think about not feeling well or being sad or mental illness or some other things that kind of show that we don't have quite as many tools to discuss our mental health as we might have to discuss our physical health. So this is really kind of the basis of our conversation today, is recognizing that we often do a lot for our physical health. We have a lot of words for physical health. We have a lot of tools on how to help our physical health. We know where to seek support. We know what questions to ask. And then oftentimes in our mental health or our mental well-being, we don't always have those tools. We may not know what sort of words to use. We may not be able to recognize when we're not doing well. And we certainly may not understand how to support our mental health or how to seek help around that category. So that's kind of what we're going to go through today, and ultimately come up with not only some identifiers, but also some positive skills that we can utilize and take away to keep ourselves well as caregivers, and also to help support athletes in the same capacity. So I'll talk a little bit also about the Strong Minds program that we do at the Special Olympics events, where athletes can participate and kind of go through some of that skill building. So we are going to start with the concept of stress. So there is, you can see this beautiful word cloud, and stress is a pretty common word that we can utilize when it comes to talking about our mental health. So what I think is really interesting about talking about mental wellness with Special Olympics athletes is that I think there's a really wide vocabulary for what people might be utilizing when they talk about their mental health. So stress might be one of those words that many people can identify with. So we're going to use stress as kind of our word to talk about the sort of things that we might be going through when we want to identify our mental health or our mental wellness. So stress is not a bad thing. Stress is not something that is atypical or not normal. We all have stress in our lives. It is something we talk about with athletes in Strong Minds, that stress is normal. Stress is something we all go through, and stress is healthy to a degree. When we feel pressure or when we get excited about something, a little bit of stress can move us forward. It can get us motivated to prep for something. It can kind of keep us safe. It's something that we recognize as being a tool to help us through a situation when we can recognize that stress. But there's also a time when stress becomes too far into a category where it's affecting your daily living. The stress of your life is affecting your ability to do the things you want to do, or it's affecting your mood in a way that is not characteristic of how you would like to feel. or it's maybe not allowing you to live the most fulfilled life that you would want. So being able to identify that stress and being able to talk about stress and figure out what is creating that stress is a great tool to practice, and something that I like to parallel to the kind of practice we do in things like athletics, where we have to practice our skills and we have to figure out maybe what we're not as good at and really put energy there. This is the same kind of category that we're going to use when it comes to our mental wellness. We're going to practice, we're going to find the areas that might be more stressful in our lives, and we're going to find tools to help us get through those situations so that we can live a more positive wellness in our life. So we're going to start this conversation, you go to the next slide, Brittany, with the idea of this family forum being a place where also parents and coaches and friends of athletes kind of come together and also want to learn. And we know that being dedicated supporters of Special Olympics athletes can be a stressful role. There's a lot around caregiving for somebody, any other person in your life, whether it's an athlete or another family member, or if something in your job, you're a carer for other people. There's a lot of stress that comes with that. So there's a great list of words on this slide that we all see as very positive things, because they are, but they're also things that bring stress to us at times. So when you're listening to others, that a lot of that can bring stress. And when you're encouraging others, when you're supporting other people or guiding other people, all of these things come with the role you play, and also might be things that provide some stress to you in your life. And part of what we again are going to do is be able to recognize that and try to keep things in balance. So recognizing stress and worry. I do think it's really important for all of us that support athletes, to be able to also model these skills and be able to model them for ourselves. And so when we talk about recognizing stress and worry, I think it's a good practice for all of us to see how this affects our own lives and how we self-recognize, so that we can also be a support to others as we want to help them identify what sort of stresses are in their lives and how they might work through that. So here are just some examples of recognizing stress. Maybe some early warning signs, and these are going to be really individualized. They're going to be things that are going to be very different per person, but they might kind of resonate or help you get your mind thinking about what might be some of the areas of your life where you might start to see some of these things. So often, somebody who's feeling an additional amount of stress might become less talkative, or might talk a little bit more than they usually do. People might be avoiding some social situations, isolating, and might be, neglecting their appearance or personal hygiene, changes in appetite, which could be not eating at all or potentially overeating, changes in energy levels, so feeling really less active, not wanting to do the things you want to do, or having some kind of overactivity, feeling like you can't really stay organized, you can't focus on what you're doing. There could be less enjoyment in previous activities, and potentially some disrupted sleep patterns, so sleeping too much, not getting enough sleep, irregular sleep, maybe not good quality sleep, and then also potentially some changes in mood, irritability, things like that. So if you were to see these situations or these characteristics play out either in your life or in an athlete's life, that might be an indication that that person is experiencing a higher amount of stress, or it just might be a place to start maybe looking a little bit more to see if there might be something else going on that we can support an athlete in. I think it's really, I'm going to kind of pause here, because I think when we look at some of these examples, I think there's one example kind of about like the overeating, or maybe like getting fast food instead of cooking at home, which you normally would want to do. And I do also think it's really important to recognize that this is not really the place to have judgment on those things. So we don't need to spend excess energy feeling bad about making that choice and not having that energy to cook, so we order out. Instead, I would just encourage putting energy towards figuring out how you would rather be doing that, or the things you can get better in balance in your life so that you can do those things that you do want to do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here for people to get a little bit stuck in kind of feeling bad about the coping skills they have, or not really liking kind of the outcome of what's happening. And I would just encourage that we put energies towards living a more positive lifestyle and identifying those places that we would like our lives to improve. So if you look on the next slide, this talks a little bit about the mind-body connection. Oh, there we go.
Amy, before you start on the next slide,
Yeah,
Mike has his hand raised.
sure.
Wondering if we can unmute him, Brittany.
I'm struggling to navigate the Zoom and the PowerPoint for some reason.
Let me
So
see.
that's why I jumped 20 slides all of a sudden. So yeah, if you could, Missy, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
there we go.
This is Mike Schultz, an athlete from the Albany Red Theater. Just a quick question. This is COVID-19. How do we deal with our stress during this pandemic? Any advice?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And that's a really great question. And all, the slide before, we talked about some of those things that, we might be feeling when we're feeling stressed. We might be feeling those a lot right now during the COVID situation, where we're even more isolated than we'd like to be, or we're not able to participate in some of those activities that we really like to do. So I think recognizing that, and I appreciate you bringing that up and having that insight that sometimes things in our life create this stress. And so what later in the presentation, I'm actually going to run a little bit quickly through the Strong Minds activities just to give a little info on those skills. And there's going to be a little bit more throughout the presentation on some ideas of how you can build some of that positive thinking throughout this time. Does that work for you, Mike?
Okay, thank you. Yep.
All right. And if I didn't answer your question, or I don't answer your question, we can always revisit that towards the end as well, okay? All right, so this mind-body connection slide, I think is a really great visual for how things interact in our minds. So this red, yellow, green visual on the left signifies this cycle where our thoughts create feelings, our feelings create behaviors, and our behaviors reinforce thoughts. So if we were to pick potentially a negative thought, and I'll just kind of make one up about, I cannot get on top of my schoolwork, okay? That's my negative thought. And that creates really bad feelings. I feel really unmotivated. I don't feel like I can get on top of that. In turn, that's likely going to create some behaviors where I don't start doing the things I need to do in order to get on top of my schoolwork. And then in turn, I don't get on top of my schoolwork, and that reinforces my thought that I can't get on top of my schoolwork. There's kind of a cycle that happens where our thinking and our feelings and our behaviors kind of all reinforce each other. But what we can also do is utilize the strength of, if we put a positive thought in there, we can change that cycle. So if my thought is, I feel like I can get on top of my schoolwork because I have the tools, then I'm going to feel, I might feel a little bit more motivated. I might feel a little bit more hopeful. I might feel capable of asking for help. And then our behaviors or our feelings are going to create those behaviors that are going to help us do that thing that we want to do. In this example, getting on top of our schoolwork. And then we're going to hopefully do that. And we're going to have a good experience. And that's going to reinforce our thoughts that we can, in fact, do it. And so we can see opportunities here where if we consistently have some negative ways of thinking, we're likely going to reinforce a negative thought pattern and negative feelings and then negative behaviors, and it's going to go in a little bit of a cycle. But again, we can interrupt that by having a reframe on some positive ways of thinking, which hopefully can cycle through and create more positive feelings, which can create more positive behaviors, which can reinforce us continuing to have some positive ways of thinking. And then the one on the right is, again, it's kind of the same idea. So, you know, feelings of stress go to thoughts. I'm able to manage. When you're able to manage, you might have that more improved mood, which is going to help with helpful thoughts and behaviors. And adding this, for example, relaxation techniques is all going to kind of go in a cycle to help us utilize our positive ways of thinking to help us get things done that we would like to. So the next slide, this is a really interesting visual, one I hadn't really seen before I was working on this presentation. But this is it's called the exhaustion funnel. It is a visual from a doctor in Stockholm who works with, sorry, somebody's knocking on the door here. The exhaustion funnel, which works, an expert on burnout. And so on the top of this visual, there is what we would consider balance. So at the very top of the funnel are when the things in your life are all kind of in balance. And what naturally happens for a lot of us is that the busier we get, we tend to prioritize some important things in our lives, and some of the things that we do that make us feel well, we sometimes fall away. So really busy days at work might mean that we don't go on that walk that we wanted to in the evening, or if we have a lot that we have going on with our families, we might not get as much sleep as we want. And so what ends up happening is a little bit of this ripple effect that kind of comes down to a point of exhaustion. So again, this is not like necessarily the entire story of what happens around exhaustion, but it's just an interesting visual to utilize to potentially kind of be able to recognize, you know, how does our life become out of balance, and what sort of things fall away that kind of funnel down where we're kind of only left with the things that are really tiring. And when we've lost touch with some of the things that rejuvenate us, we've lost touch with the things that really make us feel good, and we're kind of left in just a place where we have just the really exhausting things on our plates. And so another great visual on the next slide, and I love the title of this, Be Kind to Yourself. So like I said, I know there are many in the room are caregivers of athletes, and you know, part of caring for someone else is that you have to care for yourself. So when we talk about a lot of these topics of recognizing stress, and part of why I think we have to talk about it for ourselves is we have to recognize that if we're not well ourselves, we can't be the best support to others that we would like to be. And there was an interesting study that was conducted where it determined that 76% of adolescents reported having a special adult in their lives in a time of need. So young people were able to identify that when they were in a time of need, one of the most important things was that they had somebody around that could assist them and support them. And I think that just really reinforces this idea that we, or anyone who cares for another person, is very important to someone else's life. And when you are in that position, you also have to be ready to take care of yourself so that you can support other people. And so, you know, a lot of the work in Strong Minds that I have done at the tournaments is specifically with athletes and their mental well-being and those positive coping skills. And this is an opportunity to talk, you know, with families about how we support ourselves, that we can continue to support athletes and be that positive support for others. So on the next slide, there's a little bit of an activity. So if you have the ability to get a pen and paper, I would encourage you to do so. If you just want to do it in your head, that's also okay. But we're going to talk about identifying some of the things that you do in a typical day. So if you had to run through your day kind of quickly, could you write down about 10 things that you do throughout your day? And if anyone's able to kind of, you know, quickly write down some things that you do, and if you want to do this activity later, that's also an idea because it might take a little bit of thought. But ultimately, you can kind of write down the things you do throughout your day. And you can identify each of those things as either being in the category of something nourishing and uplifting or something that's kind of draining and depleting. And it'd be interesting to look at your list and see if one of those outweighs the other. Do you have a lot of nourishing and uplifting activities in your day? Or is your day kind of filled with things that are draining and depleting of your energy? And I think what that can help you identify is where you can better insert some self-care so that you can get those a little bit more in balance. We all do things throughout our days that are draining, work and school and taking care of families and taking care of pets and taking care of friends. All those things can be sometimes depleting of our energies. We put energies forward. And we may not as much focus on adding things into our lives that help nourish us and help uplift us. So this is an activity, like I said, that you maybe can do, in the next couple of days. Just think about the things you do and think about ways to identify which category they fit in. And if you're feeling like you might be lacking a little bit in the nourishing and uplifting activities, then we've got some suggestions kind of moving forward. So on the self-care slide, there's a couple different kinds of self-care. So everyone's going to define self-care a little bit differently, and everyone's going to find activities or things that they like to do that are going to be just very much in what you like to do. Some people might like to do yoga, some people might not like yoga, some might like stretching instead, or dancing, or lots of different things. So I really encourage you all to think about the kind of self-care in these categories that really resonate with you, things that you really enjoy. And you can kind of think about them in these categories. So there's physical self-care. Again, that could be eating well and sleeping well. Social self-care, talking to people that really love you and support you, and people you like being around, people that make you laugh. Mental self-care, having those times of quiet and ability to relax. And emotional self-care, doing things you really like and things that make you happy. And spiritual self-care, things that connect you with nature or connect you maybe with a church or anything that you would consider spiritual. So there are several activities that we can suggest here. And these are all things that you can kind of take away that might be important to you. And really the big takeaway is not necessarily what you do for self-care, it's that you actively insert it into your day. So again, kind of in that funnel, or someone commented kind of the tornado, it does look a tornado. Part of all of this is recognizing that it takes a lot of work to add self-care into your life. We're really good at taking care of other people. We're really good at prioritizing a lot of things in our life, but some things that we don't always prioritize are these self-care activities. And so I encourage, as we talk about these things, to really think about how you can add self-care into your day, how you can prioritize yourself, and in times when we also prioritize other people, and how we can, make sure that self-care is not an afterthought. It's not something it's not something that you have to necessarily be ready for. You get to put it in and you get to decide where it goes in your life. So a couple of the suggestions they have here, it says we can do things to help our bodies feel good, which in turn improves our emotional health and well-being. Make time for yourself, structure your day, make sure you can plan it out so you've got time to do things. Be realistic, realize what you can fit into a day, what you can accomplish, and what feels manageable. Set some manageable goals, some feasible goals per day, and really be okay with not every day looking perfect. We're gonna try these things. We want to try them, and some days it may not work, and that's also okay. We'll just move on to the next day. Taking that one step at a time, and really trying to take control over the things we do so that we feel like we have opportunities to add in that self-care into our lives. So in those couple colorful circles, they were these big categories. So physical self-care, and here again is just a few more examples of physical self-care. So make healthy choices, go for a walk either inside or outside. In our beautiful Wisconsin weather, it does get quite cold outside. So I think the ability to try to find activities that you can also do inside is great prep for the times that our weather doesn't quite cooperate. Going to bed a little bit sooner than you normally do, and really focusing on getting that rest and that proper sleep, staying active, exercising, making good healthy food choices, and staying away from some of those other things that are not as healthy for our lives. Example might be drugs, alcohol, unhealthy foods, anything that may not be serving us and our physical health very well. Some examples of social self-care activities. So staying connected. Mike, when you talked about, COVID-19 and our, some of our limitations on seeing our teammates and seeing our family the way we'd like to, staying connected, having these Zoom calls is awesome. Being able to have extra phone calls or FaceTime or any other way you can connect with friends and family. I've been so inspired by the creativity that people have come up with and to stay connected with other people. But it just speaks to the importance of staying connected, to staying social, sharing your experiences with other people, being that inspiring support to someone else, and allowing other people to support you, asking for help, talking to your friends, asking for people to listen, sharing tips with each other. All of those things are really positive for your social self-care. Got some ideas of mental self-care. Getting out into nature, really noticing the things around you. Beautiful to see the nature, see the sunsets. You might find some mindfulness activities that could be really helpful for you as well. This 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is actually a really cool activity that can really ground you if you're feeling like you're getting a little anxious or you're having a hard time focusing. And it's pretty easy to remember. So this activity is going to ask you to really stay present and think of 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And by going through that activity and practicing that, the hope is that you can kind of bring yourself back to a place of more peace and more groundedness in what you're doing, kind of refocus your mind back into what you're trying to achieve. They also talk about mindful eating, again, kind of pairing that with some of the physical health, and being kind to yourself, thinking positive thoughts, and utilizing some of those positive thinking circles that we had talked about. So some ideas of some emotional self-care. Some people really like to journal or to even read some inspiring things. For example, you could talk about things you're grateful for, write those things down. Those all help kind of build your emotional self-care systems. Be creative, do drawing, photography, dancing, painting, anything that you like in that category. Try and learn something new, do a sport, which I'm sure lots of you do, musical instruments, learn a new hobby. Any of those things can kind of help build that emotional self-care. Make a playlist, enjoy the music you like, all of those things. And then finally, spiritual self-care. Some people like to do yoga. That's a way to kind of tap into your spiritual self, meditation, relaxation. There's some really cool apps that for those that, maybe have a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad, there's some really awesome apps that will lead you through meditations or might lead you through a relaxation exercise. There might be something around prayer or church or other sort of kind of spiritual entities that you might participate in, all part of that spiritual self-care. So kind of in this final slide, we want to just kind of then touch on kind of shifting from the things that we do and recognizing the things we do to also how we support our athletes. So, I think really encouraging the athlete or family member in your life to use the strong mind techniques, and I'll go over those in a second. Use your medical system that you use as far as your doctor for referrals. If you're thinking about something like a mental health professional might be of assistance, you can seek support, through some healthcare channels. Helping your athlete, verbalize some of their challenges so they can ask for help from coaches, other caregivers in their lives. And of course, there's a plethora of online resources if you're looking for, some other ways to kind of support athletes in this realm. And then for athletes, these last couple of bullet points about talking about stress and worry and sad feelings, these are really what we go through in the Strong Minds program at our in-person events. So for those that have gone through Strong Minds, I hope you enjoyed it. For those that have not yet had an opportunity to go through Strong Minds, hopefully you get a chance to do so in the near future. And what you can expect is that an athlete will be able to go through this program, talk about stress, identify stress, and then come up with some positive coping skills that they can use to navigate stress in their lives. It could be in the sports they do. It could also be in their jobs, in their school, in their home life, any of those things. So it goes through activities of using a stress ball, recognizing the stress we hold in our bodies and how to release that stress. It goes through some positive thinking and some ways to come up with messages that we can tell ourselves and remind ourselves so that we kind of back to that cycle, we can create some positive mindsets. There's some strong breathing exercises. So in times of stress, being able to calm yourself, to use your breathing to kind of recenter yourself. Strong stretching, which is a great way to release some of the physical tension in your body and focus on your body so that you can also relieve your mind of some of that stress. Supporting others. So being able to give words of encouragement to others, which is a great way to really help ourselves too. It feels really great to help someone else, to be able to support someone else. And then also strong planning. So being able to make goals and recognize the things that an athlete might really like to keep doing, the situations that they really want to utilize those skills, and deciding which of these activities they really resonate with, and making a plan for them to be able to use those in those situations that they've identified that they might be helpful. So that's the Strong Minds program. And like I said, I really hope that, in person we have an opportunity to have these programs soon so that you can, experience that. In the meantime, we're able to do some virtual programming, which I think has been equally as successful and super awesome to connect with athletes around building these skills. So that is kind of the entirety of the particular slides I have. And just to recap, my motivation for really talking today is talking about mental wellness in ways that sometimes we forget to do so, or we don't feel super practiced in doing so. So I hope you're able to think about this talk today as a starting point, something that you can start to build some vocabulary around mental wellness, how you can start to identify places in your life that might be creating extra stress, places that you can identify maybe athletes having extra stress in their lives, and together finding coping strategies that can really help. And I will always emphasize that, as a support to an athlete or a support to anyone, you have to be taking care of yourself in the meantime. Those analogies of you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help someone else if you don't have the capacity or you're too burned out. So really focusing on being able to model those skills for others, and to be able to really make sure that you as supports to athletes can keep doing the work you're doing and keep supporting the people you love so that you can help them in their mental wellness. So yeah, that's kind of like the content that I had to share today. I hope that was helpful, or just some ideas to move forward. Are there any questions or comments And I know there's a couple in the chat I wasn't able to see as we went.
Amy, one thing I'll mention to the group is we'll send a follow-up email, and along with that, I can share a Strong Minds handout. So you briefly talked about some techniques that you can do, and it'll have visual, pictures and descriptions of those activities. So we can share that. If anyone would like to try any of those, we'll send that in our email. In that email that will come from Brittany will also be a survey that we hope all of you can take. Just got a few questions about the session to see what you thought. And I maybe think it's asking for addresses, Brittany, or did we already capture that in our registration?
Yeah, we already captured that. So the reason why we asked for that is because we'll be sending each of you a stress ball so that you can use some of the techniques. Don's giving us a good example. And then also some materials that will go along with the fitness program next week. So
once we are back, Amy, be able to have a Strong Minds event at a sporting event. There's also a great resource that comes with the Strong Mind program specifically for coaches and parents. So if an athlete goes through the Strong Minds program themselves, there's also a resource for coaches and athletes on how to kind of continue supporting those coping skills throughout that athlete's day in life and whatnot, kind of outside of the activity. So you can also feel free to ask for that if that's helpful once we have those in-person events.
Awesome. Well, Amy, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight and talking about Strong Minds and emotional wellness. We always love having you. I see a few more questions in the chat, but I think that was just, yep, you answering, Mike. Okay. Well, I think that's it for tonight. If no one else has questions, and please come see us once we do have in-person events. Strong Minds is really fun, and we'd love to see you there. Good night, everybody.
Jennifer, did you have a quick question?
Oh,
I think you have to unmute. There.
Or happy Labor Day this coming up Monday. Happy.
Oh, thank you.
yeah. Enjoy the long weekend, right?
Have a good Labor Day week.
Thank you.
Welcome.